Together, we have made Florida the freest state in these United States. Florida has stood as freedom's vanguard. Florida is a free state. Florida has stood strong as the rock of freedom. Freedom works, our rock of freedom. And be thankful that God has blessed us to live and serve in America's Liberty Outpost, the free state of Florida.
Ron DeSantis sure loves to talk about freedom, especially the kind that risks the health of people in his own state who have essentially been part of a giant natural herd immunity experiment for the past 2 years, whether they want to be or not. He used his State of the State address yesterday to brag about how he hadn't implemented life-saving COVID restrictions, entirely ignoring Florida's skyrocketing COVID-19 cases and historic death count, as if more COVID was always the goal. And it's only getting worse. A new report states that 80% of Floridians will likely contract Omicron at this rate, which of course means more customers for Ron's top donor's miracle cure. Yay. But DeSantis' zeal for freedom weirdly disappears when it comes to free speech, the right to protest, and the culture wars, like when he called on the legislature to pass a law allowing parents to sue teachers that they think are teaching critical race theory. And today, DeSantis said that he'd sign an abortion bill modeled after the draconian Mississippi law that's currently before the Supreme Court, outlawing abortions after 15 weeks with no exceptions for rape or incest. So not so much freedom for teachers or protesters or women in the free state of Florida. And if you're not already convinced that Republicans suppressing the vote and taking over the country would seriously harm our democracy, look no further than Ron DeSantis' Florida, what some people call DeSantistan, an authoritarian harbinger of what's to come for all of us if Republicans take over this country in total. Back with me, ELIE MYSTAL and Heather McGhee. Heather, let's talk about this abortion ban in Florida. This feels like the Supreme Court opened the door and Ron DeSantis is running through it.
That's right. According to NARAL, there are 15 states that are currently considering these types of draconian abortion bans, even though 80% of this country believes that people should have a right to a legal and safe abortion. This is the kind of dystopia that has been cooked up in the back rooms of elite Republican donors and is in copycat legislation across the country, whether it's the attacks on honest education, letting parents sue teachers and librarians for daring to assign Toni Morrison in schools, or deconstruct Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, or use a Ruby Bridges children's book to teach elementary school students about the bravery of a 6-year-old girl. I mean, this is the kind of dystopia that is the core of the Republican agenda, and it's because they don't have an economic agenda. They don't have an answer for climate change, clean air, and clean water. They don't have an answer for how they're going to build a strong middle class, bring jobs home. All of it is about these culture wars that are about dividing and conquering. And the scary thing is, because of the long history of this and the mismatch of the sort of echo chamber, we are seeing it work in places like Florida, seeing it work in places like Arizona, and increasingly in places like Virginia. And so Democrats have to be very, very, very strong about making sure that we have a representative democracy, that we make sure that the economic agenda that can actually deliver for the American people isn't stonewalled and filibustered and prevented from changing the real odds here in this upcoming midterm.
No, indeed. And I mean, it's sort of turning all of the country into Mississippi and Texas, and Florida's right along the way. I mean, the thing about it is, ELIE, is that, you know, because the Supreme Court has done I don't know, we can't do anything about it, sort of they've taken that attitude because they're getting what they want ideologically. A state like Florida can literally create an ideological police state. You can't protest there. As you know, Heather just said, you can't teach Ruby Bridges' book. You can get sued for assigning books. The librarians are scared. He's created a fear base among everyone who isn't his ideological match. So if you are a right-winger who wants The Handmaid's Tale, you're free. But that's a weird kind of freedom. Isn't this a consequence of essentially the Supreme Court, and you've warned about this a lot, taking a hands-off approach to the kind of ideological attacks that Republicans have unleashed against everyone but them?
when the Supreme Court rolls with what's called federalism, which is the idea that the state should have broad authority to kind of do whatever they want within their borders, there are a lot of people who think that that is a reasonable outcome. There are a lot of people who are center-left people who think that, you know, it's fine for the states to choose for themselves, and that really, if I'm, you know, a Northeastern liberal, you know, whatever, who cares about Florida? Who cares about Mississippi? I live in New York. I live in California. I'm going to be fine. And there are a couple of real deep problems with that. One of them is that most African Americans in this country still live in the states where their ancestors were enslaved, right? If you look at the top states of African American population by population, you'll see Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida. Like, those are the states. It ain't California. It ain't New York. It ain't Minnesota. It's these states. So when these Republicans, as you saw, you know, I don't know if you saw Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday, it was just like, we just want a civil divorce from the rest of the country. When these states, when these white people in these states are talking about leaving, they're talking about leaving and taking their black people with them, just like before. And I know that's going to hurt Ron DeSantis' fifis that I'm making this analogy or comparison between what they're doing now and what their ancestors did when they owned people. But it's the same thought process, that these states, these polities exist for the benefit of the white cis hetero males in charge, and it's not free for anybody else, not for the black people, not for the brown people, not for the women in these states. And so we can't, as liberals, we can't, as left of center people, just consign the South to its white supremacist fate because we cut off our left hand when we do that. We have to fight for these people, and that means that we have to fight the Supreme Court and fight their interpretations of federalism.
Yeah, indeed, because as you said, that's where most, very quickly, go ahead.
We have to expand the Supreme Court. It was a stolen court. We've got to expand the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and amen, amen. You're not going to get anything but an amen here on this panel. ELIE MYSTAL, Heather McGhee, thank you both very much. Don't go anywhere.